All right, Jonathan. It's a pleasure and honor to be on your show, man. Thank you very much for having me.
It's my pleasure.
I've lived, I feel, a very spiritually driven life or divinely orchestrated life, I should say. But in the early parts of my journeys, I really didn't see it or understand it. Of course, it took some pretty intense hits from the universe, so to speak, for me to really start to understand it. And as I gone through my transformations, I've really learned how to be more present and aware of how my external environment speaks to me. So hopefully sharing my story will help others be able to get clarity on their story as well. So I guess I'll start with really my first big spiritual experience. It started when I was in Iraq in 2009. I had been in the military since 2001. I joined 2 months after 9/11. I started as infantry and then I went and tried out for EOD, which is essentially the bomb squad for the military. After I graduated school, I went to my first unit at Fort Hood, Texas, and 6 months later, I got deployed to Iraq as a team leader. Now, when I went over there, I had been killing it in school. Like I was top of my class. I was on the fast track, getting promoted and whatnot. And then when I got to Iraq, I had this story that I created in my mind of how combat was going to be. You watch all the movies, there's so much honor and, pride in serving your country and being a part of the solution for the world. So I want to do my part, right? And so when I got over there and I started running these missions, I started to realize that the story that I had created in my mind was not the reality of the situation. And I started to have some ethical and moral dilemmas in association with the missions that I was being asked to run. And I realized the first big realization really was my first brush with the potential of dying in real time. Now, like when you go through your training, there's just this deep knowing that you're not going to die. They have safety measures in place to make sure that you're going to learn what you learn and they're going to try to stress you as much as they can. But at least I did have this knowing in my mind that I wasn't going to die. But when I got over there and I remember I ran my first mission, I picked up this IED, this full up IED, and there was a cell phone on it and it was live. And I realized, wow, if somebody calls a cell phone, I'm going to be a pink mist. I'm going to be dead. And
Wow.
for some
Wow.
reason, that hit me viscerally in a way that I did not anticipate or expect. And I feel like you don't really know who you are until you come into contact with a deep fear like that. So
Mm.
I had a deep fear of death that I didn't even realize I had a fear of. And so I froze, like my whole body froze. My life flashed before my eyes. I didn't understand what was going on. And thankfully, it's my first mission. My platoon sergeant was there and kind of helped me walk through the whole experience. I'm sure it was only a matter of minutes, but it felt like days, right? Just
Mm.
time froze for me. And after that, I started to have this doom kind of feeling that came over me that just would not leave me alone. And I started questioning everything. And I started picking fights with the authority figures. And I was really triggered. And later on, what I came to realize was that everything that I thought who I was or what I wanted to be was actually my ego driving it and not really my heart, my soul. Like I had never seen anyone die or like dead bodies before. When you see that, man, it's different. It changes you, like, especially like taking a life. So I had this sort of preoccupation with death, the concept of death, this existential identity crisis. And it brought me down a really deep, deep, dark hole. And things got kind of bad. I started kind of sabotaging my missions and I got fired from being a team leader. And things just progressed in a negative loop from there. And I ended up getting diagnosed with PTSD. And when I came back from Iraq, I came back alone. My company kind of like just discarded me. When I came back, I had no
Mm.
unit. I had no idea what was going on. And so I immediately went to the IG and they transferred me to this Warriors Transition Unit to be medically discharged out of the military. And even when I went through that process, it was a whole year long medical discharge process where it was like a different war, right? It felt like, I don't know if this is actually what it was, but when I was going through it, it felt like all these doctors were trying to prove that I wasn't injured or I wasn't wounded or I wasn't being truthful or honest with these feelings and
Wow.
experiences that I had going
Wow.
on. So I was seeing 5, 6 different doctors at once. And they were all prescribing me different medications. At one point, I was on 16 medications at once. And I even
Wow.
had in that unit, I had a couple friends die from hepatotoxicity from cross
Mm.
contamination of these medications. They did not check, they did not look up. They just like isolate and medicate is
Mm.
what we used to call it. So after about 6, 7 months of just feeling like a shell of a man, I decided on my own, I was like, I can't live like this anymore. So I just cold turkey got off everything. I was very fortunate that I didn't hurt myself. And then I just started taking testosterone and I started lifting weights.
Mm.
And when I did that, I immediately, like within days, I started to feel like myself again. What I came to realize
Wow.
later, that all these medications, they're endocrine disruptors and they shift the pH of the body, right? So my cortisol was skyrocketed. My testosterone was in the gutter. My brain wasn't getting into deep sleep mode. So I wasn't recovering and I was more disassociated from life and from myself, if anything. So when I started doing that, it brought me back to myself. It took me out of this deep depression that I was in. And so that's when really bodybuilding found me. I just started competing and put all my focus into the one thing that I felt like gave me control over my life and myself. So I was doing that once I got out of the military because I also lost a really close friend in Iraq, got blown up from an IED. And
Mm,
so all this death stuff was surrounding me and I was looking for a higher purpose, a higher calling to understand, right, this existential thing that was going on because I didn't really understand who I was or what all this meant. I wanted to understand my mind. So I
mhm,
started going to college. Once I got out, I moved to Arizona and I started going to ASU for psychology and I started studying psychology and that was good, right? I had about 2 good solid years where I was competing and training and at night I'll be bouncing at nightclubs and then I was going to school full time. But eventually that also it didn't really give me what I was seeking, but I didn't really know what I was seeking yet. So I decided, hey, instead of fulfilling this career path, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go get my massage license because pretty much all my friends are personal trainers, right? And so I can just get all my friends' clients and it's very synergistic. So why not, right? So my massage school was in Las Vegas. So I moved from Phoenix to Las Vegas. And when I went to massage school, about 2 months into it was when I had my second really level, I guess you could say, of awakening or spiritual experience, where the first thing that they teach you when you're going through massage school is to get into your beingness, right? You're basically massaging each other every day, all day, learning the processes. So when you're getting ready to work on somebody, you're supposed to take some deep breaths, ground yourself, connect to your client, right? And then get in the present moment, slow yourself down. Well, after about 2 months of doing that, mind you, when I went to massage school, I was still at the end of my bodybuilding career. I was 25 pounds bigger than I am now. So I was pretty jacked, but I was still in fight or flight. At this time, I had quit all the medications, but I continued to take Ambien at night to go to sleep and then Adderall in the morning to wake up. So I started to slow myself down, and a couple months into it, I started getting this crazy headache. It was like a cluster headache. It was a headache like I've never had before, and it was driving me nuts. And one day it got so bad that I wanted to bash my head into a wall just to make it stop. I was gonna like go to the hospital, but my partner that day that I was working with was like, "Hey, can I do some body work on you? See if I can help." So yes, please, anything. I'll try anything right now. So he just gently put his fingers in my CV4 joint, which is right where the cranium meets the neck and it like blasted me out of my body. It turned into like a psychedelic experience. And I felt like I was being sucked down this like black hole. And on the outside, like I kind of left my body. And on the outside, I guess it looked like I was having a seizure. I was twitching around and, flopping like a
uh,
fish. Lasted for 2 hours in front of the entire class. And
wow,
once it was done, I felt like I got hit by a truck. Once I came to, I was freaked out. I asked the instructor, like, "Do I need to go to the hospital? Like, what just happened to me?" And he was actually laughing at me. I was like, "Is this really a
wow,
laughing matter? Like, what's going on here?" So he said, "You just had the most intense SCR I've ever seen anyone have." Now, for those of your viewers that don't know what that is, it's a SCR stands for somato emotional release. So, we hold on to emotion in our fascia, in our physical tissue. So, what I learned later on was that by doing this breathing and relaxing and getting into my, stillness, it started to regulate my nervous system. And it got to a threshold where finally it started to balance out. And when it did, all this pent up sympathetic dominant emotional crap that I had been suppressing, through all this stuff that I've been through, started to release. So it created what's called fascial unwinding, right? My fascia finally re-regulated itself through shifting the frequency of my mind and my body. So my nervous system had a complete and total reset, right? So
amazing,
after
amazing.
this experience happened, I didn't understand, like I didn't want to eat the same foods. I didn't want to bodybuild anymore. I didn't want to be around the same friends. I completely shifted and changed. I even broke up with my girlfriend at the time. I changed everything in my life. I still didn't really know where I was going, but I just knew that I felt super drawn just to do body. All I wanted to do is body work. I just wanted to learn and understand the human body because I would also get these images in my mind when I would be working on people. And after a while, they were getting stronger and stronger. And I remember I was working on this one girl one time. She was a fitness competitor. I was working on her lower back and I kept getting this image of a little girl getting into a car accident. I kind of played off like, oh, that's nothing, right? Like it's just my mind, playing tricks on me or like wandering or whatever. But I was like, I'm going to ask her. So I stopped for a second. I was like, hey, look, this might sound weird, but have you ever been in an accident? Do you have a child or when you were a little girl, did you ever get in a car accident? She looked at me with a shock in her face, started crying. She's like, oh my God, I was just literally reliving. I got in a car accident when I was 8 years old and where my mom died. And
Wow.
so she had been holding that in her lower back. And then I realized this little stuff in the periphery is actually everything, right?
Mm.
So that got me super curious about what does this mean? What is happening to me, right? Like, and
Yeah.
what I really started to realize and understand was that empathy was really my superpower. But in order to do that, I had to learn to feel my feelings. And for my entire life, I grew up in a very tumultuous situation, foster homes and gangs and homelessness and the whole nine. So
Wow.
I was always in fight or flight. So when I finally started to come out of that, right? All this emotional stuff, this emotional turmoil, all these attachments and even addictions and things like that started to come up. And it was very jarring, very confusing at first. I didn't understand what was going on. So as things continued to progress, about 6 months after that particular bodywork session, I was working with a client. She told me that she knew of an ayahuasca ceremony going on. And I asked if I wanted, do it. And I didn't really know anything about it. It was 2014, right? But did some research. I think Joe Rogan had a podcast where he had talked about it at that time. And I realized, wow, okay, yeah, I do feel called to this and I'm freaking terrified. But I decided to do it. And when I went there, I was absolutely terrified. I was like, am I going to have a bad trip? Am I going to, is it going to kill me? Am I going to go down to hell? Or like, what's going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I decided to just go into it anyways with all this fear. And about an hour and a half into the first session that I did, this warm, smooth, slow, relaxing, loving presence just came over me. And I heard this voice from this spirit of this medicine. And she was just telling me almost like, a mother rocking like me as a baby. It's like, it's okay. You can let go. Everything's going to be fine. And what I came to realize was that that feeling was the true feeling of unconditional love. Now, I had never felt that before. And when I felt that, I realized that is what I had been looking for.
Mm.
And so when I felt that, that was really the biggest fundamental shift until that point in my life, because I realized every relationship, every motivation that I had in my life before that was based on an attachment style, not on motivation or love or, something that's good for me. It was
Mm.
actually my trauma speaking to me and not my heart speaking to me. So that's when all my relationships started to change. And I started digging into like looking at my childhood wounds with my mom, my dad, my abandonment issues, rejection issues, and all these different things that I was constantly really running away from. I was running away from myself the whole time until I really sat and I faced myself with that. And that was the
Mm.
beginning of about a 10-year long journey of going into that space. Because once I started getting answers, I started to feel like I was bringing parts of myself back into
Mm.
my, current reality. Now, while I was doing that, like I did take a little bit of time off from bodybuilding, right? I stepped back. I started doing yoga. I tried being a vegan. I tried doing all the styles and things that were going on there. Ultimately, I'm happy that I did that stuff. I became a master body worker. I started doing FST. I started working with chiropractors and other functional health specialists, doing a lot of biohacking and different alternative means of diagnostics to identify the holistic properties of consciousness and in the body, mind, emotion connection. And this all ended up being the sort of layers or levels of different approaches or perspectives, like you said, different roads leading to the same path. I just happen to need to go through quite a few layers to really
Yeah.
start to get the clarity and understanding of where I'm going and what I'm doing. And now I'm able to. I work with a lot of veterans that have been through similar circumstances as me, and I work with fitness and nutrition as well as biohacking technologies and techniques. I practiced Tai Chi and Qigong for a while. I did do MMA when I was in the military, but I was
Mm.
getting ready for a fight when I was in EOD school. I was training mostly BJJ and Muay Thai, and then I injured myself. I tore my left bicep tendon, and it just so happened that I injured myself a day before a massive test that I had in school, where I had to carry this like 60-pound manual disruptor that was like a huge manual shotgun looking thing, and I had to wear the bomb suit, which is also 100 pounds. So I have this torn tendon in my shoulder and I got to carry this thing. And ultimately I passed the test and I was okay. But I was like, whoa, I got to step back. And so I did physical therapy on myself for about 3 months. And I realized this more controlled movement was really more what resonated with me. So that's kind of what brought me into the whole bodybuilding world. And then when I started really focusing on my nutrition and diet, I realized, wow, if I can structure my life and I have this control over my body and it keeps me from wanting to control things outside of my reality. Right. So all these realizations started coming through as I had to be brutally honest with myself, the things that were not working in my life, the habits like going out and when I was in stationed at Fort Hood, every weekend, the guys would all go out drinking and just getting into trouble and just stupid young people stuff.
Yeah.
And that stuff definitely, I realize I'm the type of person that I 100%, like need to stay away from all that. And I have to have that daily discipline or else I can go, I'm like a all or nothing. So I either go
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
way into discipline or I go all the way into dysfunction. So now I just dedicate my life to doing the healing work and helping people and developing strategies to understand the mind body emotion connection. I feel like that's one major factor that a lot of people miss is connecting the emotional component to physiological and even imbalances in the body and the mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna say a few things, then ask you some questions. So for me, when I hear you speak, I get this. First of all, I'm very touched by your journey because it's very, very real. And when I look at humanity, if you look at one end of the spectrum, it may be completely resting into God, into the divine, into love, whatever somebody may feel that is, and there's a complete rest, sensitivity, and union and connection, knowing that you're connected to everyone and everything, and you don't want to cause any harm, whatever somebody would describe that as. But that level of sensitivity, which I hear, you and I think it's part of our soul yearning to be there. And then the other end would be completely cut off and total violent aggression without any connection to feelings or humanity. I'm just playing with these two ends of the spectrum, and it sounds
Yeah.
like a lot of people may get to one end of the spectrum or may not, or may live in the middle somewhere, but it sounds like you really lived both very fully, and you are now in this place where you're more refined and you're still doing these powerful things. Maybe you're lifting and you're helping all these fitness people and PTSD. So it's, in a way, it's a rough world. You've came from a rough environment. You're still spending time with people that came from or in that, and you're trying to help support them find the deepest beauty and love and healing within them. And I find there's so many ways that people talk about mind, body, spirit, or this or that. And as you know, and most people that do mind, body, spirit work really know that it's all connected. It's not separate. It's really one, but we can look at it in
Exactly.
different ways to work on it. And so when you have people coming to you with all degrees of trauma, and whether they're aware of or not, their angst is looking to rest into the place of home in themselves, into this place. What are some ways that you found to really help people, either if they don't have the interest, to realize that that's what they're looking for, to unravel it? Because people get very attached to a story of their life, which is very real for
Yeah.
them. But the
Yep.
story is usually not the place where we heal. It's coming from a different place and understanding the story and loving. So I'm just curious because in some ways it's so simple. Okay, we come here, we come from some miracle, we rest into that
Right.
miracle, and we're the happiest we can be, and we honor that in other people, and we do good work, which is remarkable. But there's also a lot of confusion and chaos, and the way society's built. It's like a race, who can win, me against you, and all these things, going to bars and fighting and bouncing, all this stuff, and confusion and depression and PTSD. So when you throw all this into this stew and there's just this simple thing of resting into your soul, how do you help people make sense of all this?
So one universal starting point is meeting people where they're at because everybody is at a different starting point. And also it's all depicted upon their belief system. So getting to know someone for a little bit and just asking them open-ended questions and see how they respond and seeing what they believe, like what your beliefs on marriage, what your beliefs on career, what your beliefs on life purpose of being a father, of being a provider, all these different things. And creating a safe space is also mandatory because the world doesn't feel safe, right? So we are all, in a sense, I believe we're in this big spiritual war right now. And the darkness is the temptation trying to pull us into our imbalances, our bad habits, our negative thought processes, and the cracks in our boundaries, right? Like taking on responsibilities where they are not yours and whatnot. These kind of develop from our environment when we're a child and they get sort of embedded in our central nervous system. And then as we get older, we have to learn how to identify where these sensations that are created as protective mechanisms, but these protective mechanisms also keep us from opening our heart because everybody has some pain in their heart somewhere. At the very core, it's about connecting with someone to help them feel safe enough to feel their feelings. That's really the bottom line. Especially men have a much harder time with this than women, but emotional intelligence is a major focus I have when I'm working with someone. Say I'm working with an athlete, right? Well, seeing the intention behind how someone works out or how approaches training, their philosophy on training when they're in the gym or even like rolling around the mat, right? Like, what is their body language saying? What is their technique saying? What is their breath saying? All
Mm,
these things tell a story about the autonomic functioning of the body and the mind. So, breaking these things down, you have to kind of test the thresholds of where someone is at so that number one, you don't really trigger someone into shutting down. But at the same time, you get someone with certain communication approaches so that they start to question their own processes. Now, typically when
mm,
someone comes to me, they're already in the space where they're open, like, okay, I'm messed up somewhere and I need help. Like that's the number one first. Like if you're not open to being coachable or if you're not open to changing, then there's nothing that anyone can do for you. Right.
mhm,
And I believe that I have gone through everything that I have gone through because the experience is really what energetically connects me to people so that, they say like I have suicidal thoughts. All right, well, yeah, I've been there. And then you tell a few stories and then you create that bond where, okay, he gets me. And then once
mhm,
someone understands, okay, then clearly you made it through that. You're still here. What are some ways that we can go into that direction? And then you have to test the threshold of the fear because everyone is afraid of something. Like over time, what I learned with my fear is that learning how to utilize your fear as a guidepost, not allowing the fear to control you, but you taking the reins of the fear and being able to feel it. You're like, okay, this fear means this within me. So how do I feel the fear and do it anyways? And for the
mhm.
highest vibrational good of everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah.
And spiritual beliefs are a big, 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 huge factor. Like Christians will respond certain ways and certain approaches, whereas Muslims will have a different understanding, whereas Buddhists will also have a different understanding. So
Mm,
I feel like I've studied, like I believe in Christ. I think I have a more Gnostic approach to my belief in Christ than like some traditional ways. But I also have studied Buddhism. Of course, when I was in Iraq, I met a lot of Muslims and picked their brain about that. I've studied Hinduism and many, many different teachings out there because I like to have a full ideology and understanding. And I'm not attached to any one way. I just know that
mhm,
we all have a spark of God within us. And really it comes down to, are you going to allow yourself to let that spark guide you? Or are you going to allow your fear to pull you away from that and separate yourself from yourself and continue to teach these difficult lessons? Because as we get older, we all hit a threshold. That's why you see like a lot of people, like the whole midlife crisis. Everybody hits it around between, I'd say 35 and 50. But everyone gets to a point where either toxins build up and now the body is saturated with toxins, or the mind, you're taking on too many things from too many other people and you can't handle it. The pressure builds up too much and you start to struggle with depression, anxiety, all these different psychological factors. Whatever it might be, it's about when we end up getting to that threshold, learning how to take a step back, be the conscious observer of our behavior patterns, and then learn to understand how it's influencing our physical and mental bodies so that we can step into the faith in a safe place to be able to move through it. And the good thing is, like this day and age, this is what the biohacking world, I think, is really like the next healthcare system because the biohacking world really gives us opportunities to step into these places voluntarily and reset our nervous system or reset our biochemistry, heal our gut, and understand how these things are interacting together. And once we understand it, then we know why what's happening is happening. And once we know why, we have the responsibility to ourselves to make that change.
I love so much of what you're sharing, and I'm going to ask you more questions about it because I think it's really important for A, for you to be able to share what you know, and B, for anyone listening to be able to maybe grab onto something to inspire something to reach out to you or whatever may be in their life. So let's start with the spiritual component. So, from your spiritual perspective, if you were to say, this is the deepest spiritual belief and experience that I see and I have, and this is how I feel people can find it in themselves. So here are some ways to people to explore in themselves to find that meaning, that experience, and a concept of spirituality and God that works for them.
So, what comes to mind with that question is what I see out in the world is most people, especially if they're feeling unfulfilled in life, is because they're still looking outside of themselves for the answer. So we seek this external validation. We seek, and the world is trying to tell us who we are. And with all like the 5G and the toxins in the foods and the toxins in the water and all these different things that are attacking us, it keeps our wires slightly frayed, if you will. Right. And so with that, being able to take a step back and recognize, where am I looking outside of myself for answers? It's good to get insight from a coach or from other people. But at the end of the day, we have to learn to trust our own decision-making process. Because what happens a lot of times is that, like, say, if I'm working with someone and they're like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Well, I don't
Yeah.
like that answer. I want to have open-ended, vulnerable conversation, and I want to be able to help guide you so that you answer your own question. Because ultimately, that's what we need to learn how to do. So it's important to surround yourself with people that will hold you accountable. So that's another thing that you look at in your environment. They say that you are the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. So is your intimate relationship always on the rocks, or is there always kind of drama or chaos? Or how's your relationship with your children? How's your relationship with business and your business partnerships and your employees? Where is all this stuff happening? Are you constantly projecting? And when you're doing introspection, are you taking on all these responsibilities that aren't yours and blaming yourself? That's also not productive at all. It's about having that healthy boundary, honoring what your part is playing in the circumstances, and then creating healthy boundaries based on you being connected to your emotions. And everybody learns this in their own way, in their own time. It took me a long time. Now, for me personally, the greatest teachers for this have been plant medicine, most notably Ibogaine. I did Ibogaine 4 times in 2021, and that completely changed my life. It's essentially like a 36-hour long, near-death experience where you do a
Wow.
review of your life. It resets all your neurochemistry, all your receptor sites. Like, it kills off all the pathogenic bacteria in your body. It kills cancer. I've even seen it reverse paralysis. Someone was
Wow.
paralyzed from the waist down, and they didn't walk immediately, but they started to be able to feel and wiggle their toes and feet. And I'm sure by now they're probably walking. It's been about a year. So these things are able to really help to re-regulate. I'd like to point something out too, as far as that. There's a lot of taboo that's still around the whole psychedelic space, but these things are natural. They come from the earth, and we naturally produce DMT in our brain. You can activate it with breath work. So I want to differentiate between a drug and a medicine. A drug is anything that manipulates or suppresses something in the body, that creates a ripple effect of manipulation that always depletes something in the body. A medicine is something that kicks out the toxins and re-regulates or realigns whatever is meant to be in the body organically, right? So when you take a look at that and we look at the pharmaceutical world, it's clear as day. I see a lot of people these days. I work with a lot of people that are trying to get off of medication, but there are so many people out there that they go to the doctor, they get a pill for this and a pill for that, like high blood pressure medication, statins, all these different things that are literally killing people from the inside out. And that's something that we have to be really cognizant and aware of, and learn a whole new mindset and philosophy about how the body works in its holistic nature, and teach people how these things work. So this is another big part of what I do, is I help people understand how these things are working in the body and how to switch their mindset to look for lifestyle habits and patterns, behaviors, and approaches to creating this holistic process to bring the body back into alignment. Because once the body is back in alignment, then the signaling in the vagus nerve from the gut to the brain, those are essentially your 2 brains. Once that's in alignment, then now you're seeing things from a centered perception, and then you can make the right decisions and you can choose the direction of your life that is going to be optimal for you. And also during that process of the shift, typically because of vibration, everything is frequency. And because of where we've been living, we've surrounded ourselves with toxic things, either parasites that are taking advantage of us, or living situations that are not optimal, that is sucking your life force out of you. So when we make these changes and we shift our vibration, the triggering, right, all the drama is going to get louder and louder and louder, because now we have to change our environment and we have to create a new structure of life in order to be able to in alignment. And so there's a transitionary phase when we go through this process where everything falls apart. Things that we thought were going to last forever don't, because it really wasn't good for us. Then we have to learn to integrate the lesson. And then we create this new foundation. It's like knocking out the old life, because the old life was killing us. We have to go through that. And that transitionary process requires vulnerability and faith. And Once you have that faith and vulnerability, then you can start to make decisions based on what's really good for you. Then you start to attract all the things that are in that new vibrational alignment. And that's how the whole process goes, like in its entirety. But that doesn't make the process going through it any easier. And this is really why I wrote both my books. My one book, The Indigo Flame, is a story about my life. It's more about the spiritual journey that I've taken. And then my other book, The Biohacker's Guide to Spiritual Bodybuilding, was my spiritual connection to my journey in bodybuilding and what it taught me, and going deeper into the intentionality and the looking at the behavior patterns and what they mean and according to how we do it and why we do what we do.
So as far as the spirit, is it fair to say that we could say to somebody, hey, we all come from this magical spark. You may call it God, you may call it this, you may call it that. There are different paths: Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, all different other paths that started probably from some awakening and a journey, a time period, whatever it may be for each person's belief, or just started from God, however someone wants to say it. And it's a path to help you return to rest into God. And to go back to what you answer the question of, each person has to ask inside themselves, if I didn't know anything and I had this opportunity to say, I come from this magical spark, let's call it God, and I understand that there's a way to rest into it. There are these ways. Let me look at them and see which one rings true to me in the deepest sense.
I would add to that, as you're going through this process, you can understand that intellectually, but when you go through it experientially, it's going to rock you. You're not going to understand what's going on. And that's a big part of the letting go. And because there's that natural part of us that wants to know and understand and control and like see the whole road before it appears. But it's essentially turning from a caterpillar to a butterfly. The caterpillar is a version of us that was out of balance, out of sync. Now, the ironic thing is that that caterpillar life probably gave you something of worth that you consider worthy. Like, a lot of people that make a lot of money, right? A lot of very successful people in the world are having very difficult times with their health right now. So it served a certain purpose, and you may have to let go of what your idea of being successful out in the world is, because now that's not serving your highest purpose. And the more successful you were as a caterpillar, the more difficult it is to go into that new phase. So you have to trust the chrysalis process, where you're mutating, you're forming, you're melting into a goo, and you don't know who you're going to become. And that's scary. So that's where the fear is at its maximal capacity. That's what some would call the dark night of the soul. And then once you really do learn how to surrender, the timing of this, you're never going to know how long it's going to take. Some people, it takes one experience, a couple days. Some people, it takes 10 years, like me. So you have to fully surrender. Like, learning how to surrender is the process of going through the chrysalis and leaving the caterpillar in all the things that it did serve you, but also all the things that were hurting you. Because ultimately, when you're shifting into this butterfly, you're going to a new place that you don't even know exists. And you have to trust that God has a bigger plan for you than you had for you.
Yeah, this morning I was just thinking of this very thing about surrender, because in spirituality, it's a very common term. And in my experience, I'm sure you could share your own experience of this, but when I surrendered to the deepest level that I was aware of, that's where I found my true authentic strength and wisdom and love and peace. But there have been times where it's like, oh, I just need to surrender and let go, but not feeling the depth and the wisdom from that. So it was almost like a surrender into true love and strength, or a surrender into checking out or giving up, or just going, oh, I'm just going to trust. But that energy of doing that is a different vibration than I'm going to let go into who I really am. And I think in that, if knowing, I'm sure I've heard that, but in my process of surrendering, if I had known more aware of that, I'm like, hey, when you surrender, the way you're going to feel that it's really true surrender is you're going to be like, this is me, as opposed to, oh, I'm surrendering and disengaging with everything. So I think in the surrender, like you're saying, this beauty comes out, but in the transition, it may be clunky in your experience.
Yeah. And I would also argue that there are many, many layers of surrender. So sometimes when you think you surrendered, like you said, you really haven't fully surrendered. And then you have to navigate, well, is this disassociation? Is this me checking out? And so that good feeling sometimes doesn't come right away. And we have to allow that to be okay. I feel like I've lived 5 lifetimes in this life, because every time you go through this, you're going through like an identity crisis, the ego death. And this ego death, sometimes it can feel like you're really going to die. That's why you see a lot of people that have had near-death experiences come back totally changed because they finally shed or they finally saw the other side and now understand something that someone that has not had that experience doesn't understand. So again, surrender, you can intellectually understand it, but the experiential process is a completely different world. It's like the difference between a belief and a knowing, right? You can believe something, but that belief might be built under false pretenses or egoic pretenses or conditioning when you're a kid, but the knowing comes from the heart.
That's right on. So then looking at the mind or the brain, and again, as we spoke about, they're all interconnected, they're all one on some level, but we do work with these. So like in psychology, understanding your story, maybe being able to reframe or to understand what your part was, what other people's part was, and just getting clarity on it, the unraveling of the story. And then there's also like mindfulness, being aware of what's happening inside of you and being aware of what's happening outside of you. There's self-coaching of just being like your own best friend, your best coach, being your God coach, whatever it is for each person. There's the level of mental engagement with the moment, with the right quality of what you're putting into it, like not too much or too little. So within the mental work, are there other things if you were working with somebody without, say, taking any of the medicines or anything like that? Is there anything else that you help people with?
Well, yeah, I personal train people. I do body work. Really, body work is probably the most powerful thing aside from the medicine space because postural deviations tell a story about where the mind is at too. Wherever we're holding on to
Yeah, yeah.
inflammation or limitations in our range of motion, the physical body is a representation of the subconscious mind. And so when we really do a deep dive on identifying where there's limitations or where there's overcompensations, or say you've had many surgeries or you have a bad knee, a bad back, a bad whatever it might be, or a lot of inflammation in the gut, all these things are showing where you're not processing emotional information properly. A lot of things I see lately is emotional rigidity because there's so much pressure on, especially men. I work with a lot of men, and a lot of men have this pressure to perform, to provide, to be out in the world and win, really. And with so much volatility going on in the world, there's no safety net anymore. Like we don't know if stocks are going to be going up or down. We don't know where gold and silver are going to be at. Like the whole crypto thing is some people say it's a scam, some people say it's the next big thing. AI is also shifting and changing the whole game anyway. So there's a lot of newness and change and evolution happening. And I feel like the human condition, right? We live life to be comfortable. We want to be as comfortable and feeling good and abundant as possible. But there is in those nuances of life right now, there is no comfort.
Mm.
It's like there's a mild frazzle of the central nervous
Yeah,
system that's going
yeah,
on
yeah,
right now.
yeah.
What I see going on spiritually right now, and I kind of feel like we're still in like the beginning, like 20% of it, is we're in a big spiritual game of Red Rover. You remember that game, Red Rover, when we were
Yeah,
kids?
yeah,
So there's the dark side, which is like the worst, darkest 5%, and there's a light side, which is the light 5%. In the middle, there's 90% of humanity. And the light is calling to us in our intuition, our consciousness, like, come on over here, come on over here. Like, give up all your temptations and your vices and all these things and come to the light side. And the dark is like, yeah, but you want this good
yeah.
feeling right now. And yeah, you want this thing that's going to give you the external validation. And we are choosing every decision we make, every step we take in life is making a decision. And eventually, because there's a split going on in consciousness, I feel like probably give about like 4 to 6 years and we're going to be solidified in that new vibration in this lifetime.
What a wild game journey. Just the miracle that any of this is happening. And then the miracle that
Yeah.
we seem to have this internal call to light and love and God, but also have this darkness that could easily want to take over. And it's just a very interesting thing and how you deal with all of it. So looking at the
Tricky, man.
body, yeah, really, it is a very interesting. That's why I call this the spiritual ninja, because to me, you have to be a spiritual ninja on your insides to figure out like, how do I navigate where I know myself as love and goodness and not suppress the other, but know how to take care of it like a parent or something. And then how do I
Yeah,
navigate
be
this
the angel
world
parent.
in a way? Yeah. Then how do I navigate this world in a way that I feel like I'm living from alignment with my soul and supporting that in others? And so I feel like both of them is like a spiritual ninja because there's so many things in the obstacle course that we're having to address in our daily life. If people come to you as far as, let's pretend you can't do body work, which is huge, obviously, and let's pretend that they're not going to take any of the medicine and they're with you and they're like, hey, you're creating a safe space for me. How do I learn to have my body work optimally for life? And how do I work to free myself from any emotional baggage I'm hanging on to so things can come in and out and not be stuck with all the mud that maybe I'm holding inside, it's crusting inside?
Yeah, there's many levels and layers to how I can make this work. But of course, first identifying where they're at, and then just through conversation, like a coaching session. First 10 to 15 minutes, we just start just chit chatting, just talking. And while we're talking, I'm assessing and analyzing their energy. I've gotten to the point where I can pretty much identify exactly where someone's getting in their own way within 10 to 15 minutes talking to somebody. And then once I feel like we've gotten to a point where we're in a good flow of connection and there's some trust that's building there, then I start to deepen the questions, and I ask more triggering questions and information to see how they respond. And then I work with the way that they're either beating around the bush or the way that they're trying to skate around the subject matter that we're discussing. And then I may stop in the middle of the conversation and just do a little bit of breath work or have them journal, write things down. And I like to give homework when I'm working with someone. So, and I only like to make small incremental changes, because you throw too much stuff on someone's plate too fast, like they get overwhelmed and they're like, screw this, I can't do it. Right. So we start with the most fundamental shift that's going to be the most difficult. Like I have one client I'm working with now, he's had blood pressure 240 over 120 for the last 14 years consistently. It just won't go down. And he's on 5 medications, been to all the best doctors in the world, and nobody can figure out what's going on and why. And after about a half hour working with him, I helped him get his blood pressure lower than it had been in 10 years without really doing much of anything, just teaching him how to connect back to his body and understanding where the emotional component is. Because doctors typically don't teach the emotional component, and more people are becoming more and more empathic. And a lot of people are unaware of this component to their health. So the educational portion of helping people understand the emotional intelligence and how critically important this is, right?
Will you tell more about the emotional intelligence and how people can better understand that and practice it?
Yeah. So people have created these lifestyle patterns and habits in life, and they prioritize things really based out of necessity. I have to take care of my mother, and I got to pay these bills, and I got to do all these different things. But at the same time, it's sucking me dry. I'm not able to function, and I'm starting to have all these health issues. So there has to be some kind of sacrifice. So really first, we identify what has to be sacrificed. And typically we just have conversation until I help them identify in their own way what really needs to be sacrificed. And then it comes to having to accept that sacrifice. Because unless you're willing to sacrifice a thing that's hurting you, and there's something that it's giving you, there's some kind of belief system that's wired into the central nervous system that has to be addressed. So then I educate on how it's going to affect their physical and emotional body. Yeah, your sleep may be affected for about a week. You may need to isolate yourself, or whenever this conversation comes up, you're going to have to do step A, B, C, or D, whatever it might be. And people that really want to heal and really want to step into their true self, I'd say probably roughly 50% of people I talk to actually really want to change. The other half is usually people that are just looking for something outside of themselves, like me, to save them. And sometimes when I call that out, people are like, all right, well, I don't really have time to do all these things you want me to do. So sorry. Okay, that's your choice. But the fact is that nobody can do the work for you. So helping people understand that. And the thing that you typically have to do is the one thing that you avoid at all costs. It's the one thing that you're absolutely afraid of, or absolutely convinced yourself that you cannot do. If you're going to
Uh,
take a week off from work to just rest and recover or sleep, then that's going to throw your entire work life out of bounds. All right, well, you have to structure it and figure out a way, or let something go. There's just no way around it. And have to trust that that thing is going to come around in a better way. But there's a big lesson in all that underneath all the surface level conversations, communications, or relationships.
so it sounds to me, and then please add to this, that somebody comes to you and you're creating a very safe space for them. And in your safe conversation with them, their communication is showing you how their nervous system and how they're kind of operating in the world. And then you have a variety of tools, whether it's body work, whether it's natural medicines, whether it's certain exercise, whatever it is, to help the body, mind, spirit settle in to who they are, release the old stuff, and then be able to now live from this clearer place in their life. And sometimes the letting go can feel so difficult and hard because we're identifying with that hardness and darkness that's making us miserable, but we're so identified with it that trying to let go, we're still feeling that. But as we let go and as we experience maybe relating with you and going through this process, a light starts to flicker throughout all that darkness. And you start maybe realizing that, hey, maybe I am that light and I'm not this crock mud and all this stuff that's been pushing down and holding and striking this pose. And I think a lot of times, and also you're talking about the people that you work with, a lot of times people have been taught to be tough and it's like this hard shell, but inside there's torture happening. And so it's trusting, letting go of that shell and knowing that beneath the shell is something stronger than the shell.
Trust and safety. Those are the two main components. If you don't have trust, you don't have safety. And really trust comes through the empathic connection. And then through the trust, safety sometimes takes a little while. Well, trust sometimes takes a little while too. But that's all dependent upon like people that have been betrayed in the past or people that have had their heart broken. Really, usually it's betrayal. And I think everyone has been betrayed at some point in their life. And so facing that betrayal, I'd say probably one of the hardest things to do. Betrayal is a tough one, but eventually you got to learn. The way that I look at all that is my soul came into this life to experience these things, to learn these lessons so that through the experience, I can empathically connect and share what I feel and show that there is light on the other side of it, because everyone is dealing with some kind of darkness. And right now it's just becoming very, very obvious as the collective vibration raises. It's bringing up everybody's deepest, darkest crap. And I've even worked with girls that have been sex trafficked. The darkest, nastiest energy I've ever felt in my life. It was, I can't comprehend how people can, there's zero empathy in that energy. And another thing I'd like to point out, lately I've been noticing something, personality types out in the world. I kind of see there's 3 fundamental personality types that are really becoming dominant out there on the world stage. And there's the narcissists, which you can pretty clearly see. Narcissists are all about service to self, right? They're look at me, everything's about me. Then there's the Machiavellian personality type, which is more like pretending to be empathic, but learning about it in an intellectual way to manipulate the empathic. That's like the wolf in the sheep's clothing. That's like the most insidious personality type. And then you have the empathic people. And I feel like the shift is turning to where empathic dominant personality types are starting to become the new authority figures, because people are feeling more and more drawn to authenticity. And authenticity comes through going through these dark nights of the soul, opening the heart. Like the heart space is where true inner peace lies. And everyone has a blockage in their heart, some way, shape, or form. And really, this is, I believe, what Jesus taught about living in the heart space and being authentic and true, not conforming to the masses. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's calling out all the stuff that you can feel on the surface, like, that's some shenanigans. You're not being true. And now everybody's starting to see through that. So the authentic, empathic natured individuals are gaining that momentum, and the Machiavellian and the narcissistic personality types are starting to be called out, and they're getting their karma.
It sure seems like it's time, because so much of the narcissism and like the sleaziness, like you're talking about, has been controlling at least the infrastructure, and the people that the loves and all this is working within the system, but the system really should be structured from that place, because then that place can also support the people that have issues, that are narcissists or being sleazeballs. We can support people like that in the way that's appropriate, but not have them creating the structure for other people to live. It just seems crazy that it's like that in so many ways.
And so what we're seeing on the world stage right now is all the narcissistic and Machiavellian based systems that have been in power for so long, they're all crumbling. But while they're crumbling, we don't really know, like it's kind of an open book right now as to what's going to be built new now. And it's up to us to stand in our healthy power to be able to create that better world. We're the ones that are here to do that work, because we feel it, we see it, we know it. And we have to step into that empowerment. I believe that right now we have the opportunity big time to step into that. But that's also, again, facing a whole new level and depth of fear, because now stepping out on the world stage, there's going to be a lot of imposter syndrome. And now I'm extra vulnerable and exposed out here on the world stage. That creates whole new levels of nuanced situations that you really got to be surrounded by people that you can trust. And you really have to have
Yeah.
like good, solid, healthy boundaries, or that darkness is going to come in and just try to manipulate it in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah, when you were speaking, I had this sense or feeling kind of when we were talking before about true surrender, and that it's almost like the people or many people have been in power are this darkness or are past or unresolved issues that need to be surrendered to something deeper and stronger. And it's being played out on the world level, like when you're speaking of like, okay, here's the ego, whatever somebody wants to call it, of expressing itself fully and being control and look at me and control, 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 and taking everything for myself. And then all of a sudden that's being shattered. And that's like, okay, something beneath that is the true surrender of the strength. And wow, what a world if people can realize that we all come from the same place and we're here to work together and to create and to be one human family. So, what do you feel is the purpose of human life then?
I feel like the purpose is to be of service to humanity in whatever way that you feel passionately driven to do so. So everyone has a gift. Everyone has something that they resonate with, whether it's you love painting or you love cars or you love healing or you love bodybuilding or fighting. Take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for example. There is so much tactical mastery and mindset that goes in to the practice of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu that you become a master of yourself. And it's a healthy competition where you're kind of training for life. And that mental mastery of learning how to work with your body and the resistance and the flow dynamics of working with like push, pull, and then countering and being able to have that healthy competition, not allowing your anger or your rage to like overcome you. These are all ways that we can train our consciousness to look deeply at ourselves of how we function and how we operate. That's for me, that's what bodybuilding is. I go into the gym every day and it's like a meditation for me. I'm solely focused on the connection of my breath to my movement, to the contraction, visualizing what I'm doing. And that's for me where I'm able to really process any kind of mental, emotional imbalance that's going on. And it makes my body feel good and it gets my endorphins flowing. So whatever someone is really good at or drawn to, you take that and you create a system or a way to be able to share it with the world. If everybody were to do that, instead of like the whole influencer world out there on social media land, a lot of people like, well, I have these 5 cars and I make this $100,000 a month from doing this stuff, but it's all me, 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 me. And it's only showing the highlight reel of what's going on. It's not really showing the true nature of who you are because everybody's so concerned about marketing and advertising and the perception that is being drawn back to you. And I feel like that's going to be going bye-bye as well because there's so much inauthenticity and also a lot of manipulation. I'm not saying don't get out there on social media and express yourself 100%, but also do it without the need for the external validation and do it with the
Hmm.
intention of just expressing yourself naturally, expressing who you are and how you are. And when you do that, you become a vibrational match to the good things that will come back to you.
Yeah, I want to say something about that because I was never a big social media person, but maybe a few months ago, I can't remember the time frame, I decided with our work and everything we're doing to start creating and putting things out more, which feels really good to me and really authentic and really natural. And then a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
I put out a couple like drills in martial arts that were drills. They weren't street fighting and they were not shown perfectly by my class, but they were just me expressing. And they went, some of them went like kind of viral a little bit, but being attacked. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
man. And then so then I had a choice. I was like, you know what? Do I create looking for a response? Do I stop? And then I kind of felt things out and got different reflections on it. And I was like, okay, I want to create, but I don't want to consume. I don't want to participate in that. So now I have it set up where I'm being a little more responsible of like, okay, if this totally is not showing what I'm trying to say, even though my words are, maybe I should be a little more aware of putting things out instead of just like, oh, I just shot a video after class for fun. I put it out. That's a choice or not a choice. But the thing of I can create without being caught up in the consumption of what people are saying or not saying, other than if it's helping me create more purely and beautifully. And I think that we all have to decide what is the relationship with anything, but social media is all consuming for a lot of people. What is the relationship that's going to serve our soul and feel like we're expressing, like you're saying, like who we are and what we do, but not use it for validation or to be attacked and not use it in other ways, just consume people's stuff to compare and just use it for goodness somehow. And it's tricky because I don't know this for a fact. Let's pretend there's one type of alcohol, a certain amount is good for somebody, but anything less or more is not. But when you take it, it makes you want to have more or less. How do you deal with that? And it seems like it's kind of like that on some level.
Look, another thing about getting out there into the world, which again requires good boundaries, is exactly what you're talking about. I've had that happen to me too. And because what you're doing is nuanced to your passion, it's not going to look perfect to anyone. And there's always going to be some kind of troll out there that's going to disagree with you or have a problem. But I would argue that that's actually a sign that you are expressing your authentic creativity. Whenever you do, man, there's always going to be haters. There's haters everywhere. And like you said, all right, cool. You have your opinion. Have a nice day. And that is letting go of like the external response, because that may activate some inferiority complex or imposter syndrome. So we have to be willing to put ourselves out there, express ourselves authentically. And anyone that has an opinion or a problem with it, all right, cool. That's your opinion. Have a nice day. I don't care. Right. And that's tough, man.
Yeah, it is. And I always try to say for myself, can I use what they're giving me to be better from love? And if I can, great. If I can't,
Beautiful.
great. But not to let
Go.
it make me not be the most authentic person that I can be.
Right. So take that exact example, right? When it comes to doing the inner self work with something like that, if you get a response like that and it makes you feel a certain kind of way, well, that's also connecting to that part of you that doesn't believe in yourself. So that's where the inner work is. Like, okay, this person had an opinion. When that stuff first started hitting me too, it messed with my head. I had to do a lot of inner work to really feel into it. Most human, they either go after conflict or they avoid conflict. It's about creating a healthy relationship with the internal conflict, because the external conflict is a reflection of internal conflict. So when we can look at things like that, then it just makes the inner work more clear as opposed to taking it personal.
Yeah, no, it's right on. And even looking at, let's just say the outside part of it. So if I look at say one of these videos, the drill that I created, I think is a really good drill. So there's my
Sure is.
explanation of the drill, but then there's also the delivery of the drill. So for me, it's not perfect, but it kind of shows it. But for some people, they may say, well, that's really irresponsible. You should really make sure what you're putting out there is super clear. And someone else may say, who gives a crap? Put out whatever you want. And probably somewhere there's a place of being in love and truth and saying, okay, I want to put this drill out within my time frame and everything. What's the right way of doing it for me? And then move on and then learn something from it and move on. And that has been great because it's been a very short time for me of having that happen a couple of times and then go, okay, I sense this. This is my choice and I'm going to keep creating, but I'm going to put on some, like you said, some filters or some structure to it or some boundaries.
Yeah. I put out a video probably about a year and a half ago of doing a deadlift, showing people how I do it. Now, I lift very unconventionally, very intuitively. So on the outside, it may not look like it's textbook, but for me, clearly I'm 47 years old. I'm still staying in pretty good shape. I have no injuries. So I got to be doing something right. So I share my very unorthodox approach to a lot of things. But man, I'll tell you what, I had all these scholars that are exercise scientists and physiologists say, oh, it's terrible form and you're doing this wrong and doing that wrong. And that was a big lesson for me because, like, let's go. Come down here and let's do deadlifts together and I'll show you. But when I got into that, it just got more and more negative stuff. And I realized I'm just going to continue. So and that's actually what was the initial spark for me to write my book. So here you go.
Great.
You want to
Good
know
example.
how
Yep.
and why I do what I do? Buy my book.
Yep.
That's it.
No, that's great. That's awesome. So when I look at anybody that has learned to like rest into their soul, to be connected to love, to God, to universe, whatever someone's choice of words or experiences, to me, it's
Yeah.
just the most beautiful thing because you see the childlike, innocent purity, beauty with wisdom to navigate the world. And it doesn't matter someone's story, it's very beautiful. And when I see somebody that came from some rough upbringing and all the things you've been through, and to get to this place of softness, empathy, and love, and creating safe spaces for people that maybe never had that and didn't even understand what that may look like. And so I just know that that takes a lot of inner spiritual ninjing, again, if you will, to be able
I
to
love it.
sit here and shine with love and light and have a healthy relationship with the darkness in the way that you are parenting it and see it for what it is and not letting it be the parent or the one that's running the show. So thank you for your commitment to love and goodness in yourself and thus also helping support that in others. I have a lot of love respect and appreciation for that.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you very much for saying that. That means a lot.
Thank you for your time and spending this time together. To me, it's so beautiful to have these intimate conversations with people that I've never met, but then once again, one soul, many paths, one spirit, many paths.
Absolutely. And I feel like, especially for men, it's really important to see other men talking about their feelings because it's not an easy path. But once you go down the road, it gets easier and easier and easier. And then it's just becomes your default. Typically, I get judged a lot for the way that I look. But then when people talk to me, a lot of people are usually like, wow, you're nothing like what I thought you were going to be. I appreciate that because I can reach certain people that other people wouldn't be able to reach. And so that's where, like, I guess, like, I have a very dominant masculine kind of energy and I have intensity about me, but I also do my best to blend that in with safety or softness and like gentleness
Yeah.
because I've had to learn through a lot of hard ways how to be gentle with myself. And it has not been
Mm.
easy. So I think
Yeah.
men too, we beat ourselves up a lot and we have to learn how to be gentle and let ourselves be okay and stop trying to be so much to so many things. We got to first be all that to ourselves. And that's where the real core of the work is.
Yeah. No, and like you said, the heart, if we're able to open our heart and to love, then to know that that can be connected and related to us as well, not just to love our kid or our partner, or whatever it may be, but to love means that we've got to see that divinity in us and know that our story is a story, but the spark and the love and the divinity has and always will be there. And that's more us than our story.
Absolutely, brother. Amen.
All righty. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you too, brother.
Thank you for being part of the Spiritual Ninja podcast. I really appreciate you being here. My goal with the podcast is to share heart to heart, soul to soul conversations. So if you would be so kind to share and to follow, that helps me get the word out about the podcast. Okay. Thank you and hope to see you on another podcast soon.